My name is Gavin Evans, and this is my review of Arcane Season 2. And this review will have spoilers, so there's your warning. But if you know me, you know that I loved Arcane Season 1. I started it with no expectations, but I just completely fell in love. I loved the story, I loved the characters, I loved the animation, I loved the soundtrack, and it just affected me on a very deep emotional level, and it's just one of my favorite pieces of storytelling ever. So I was very excited for season 2, but I was also worried. Like, how do you live up to such excellence? And I think they that this season is every bit as good, if not maybe, just maybe, a tiny bit better than season 1. So let's begin by talking about the characters. And Ella Purnell as Jinx just does incredible work. She adds so much personality to this character. She adds so much energy, but she also brings so much emotional depth. And I just thought she brought this character to life so incredibly well. And Jinx is definitely a top 2 character of all time for me, and maybe the top. Like, I just love the way this character is written. In season 1, she has gone through so much. She has lost so much, and by the end of that season, she just accepts herself as a fuck up. She has no hope, and she's just a very broken person. And I love how at the beginning of this season we see her properly mourn Silco, and she just doesn't really care what's going on around her. She's just kinda wandering throughout life without any purpose. But then she runs into Savika, and Savika needs a new arm. So Jinx is just like, maybe this is something I can fix. And she does so, and she witnesses her sister Vi as an enforcer. And she finds this to be such a deep betrayal, and she is disgusted and she is heartbroken to the point where she wants to kill Vi and herself. And in doing so, she pushes back against Piltover. She releases the grey back onto them, and she is ready to die. She is glad that it's Vi ending her life because she thinks that's the proper tragic end to her story. Only for this little kid Isha to save her. And in that moment, Vi sees hope in Jinx. And Isha gives Jinx something to live for. And Jinx forms a real meaningful relationship with Isha. And she truly does love her. And in her personal fight with Vi, she accidentally becomes a symbol to Zon, and she doesn't want any of that responsibility. Isha and Sivika push her towards it, but Jinx just wants to do nothing. She wants nothing to do with anything going on. But it's only when Isha is in danger that she realizes she has to take action, and she saves a bunch of Zonites, and they are deeply moved and inspired by her actions. And I love the line where Jinx is just like, "It's me, your big fat hero." And she just treats it like a joke. But as the Zonites are leaving and touching her, she realizes that maybe she can be a good person again. And she saves Isha, and they share a deep, beautiful, meaningful hug. And it's like there's more to this character than she thought there was. And then she ends up in a big fight with Warwick, where Jinx is willing to sacrifice herself to protect Isha, but then she realizes it's Vandal. And now that she thinks highly of herself, she sees hope in herself, she uses this as an opportunity to reach out to Vi. And maybe, just maybe, they can reconnect. And at first, Vi pushes back. There's clear tension. But then they find this letter that Vandal wrote to Silco about how the dirt was on both their hands. And it shows that Vandal wasn't perfect. Silco wasn't perfect. Vi wasn't perfect. Jinx isn't perfect. And these are just characters that had a love for each other, and they both groups did things that they regretted. And it makes you think about what could have been and maybe what could be. So when push comes to shove, Jinx begs Vi to trust her that Warwick is Vandal. And Vi is willing to sacrifice herself on that belief in Jinx. And it pays off completely. That hug is no joke, maybe the most beautiful moment I've seen in any story ever. And when Vi is just like, "What are you waiting for? He's your dad too." It just tugs at the heartstrings, and it's not just the family is back together, and clearly Jinx has still made mistakes, but maybe there's hope for them yet. And I like how in the next episode, Vi asks Jinx for her input, and she's shocked by this, and they make plans to stay in this utopia. And it seems like this hope could really become a reality. And it all is based in Jinx's relationship with Isha. How that girl loved and respected Jinx, impacted her life in such a significant way. And there's this perfect moment where Jinx and Vi and Vandal and Isha are all together. Vi isn't even focused on Caitlyn at that point. She's focused on her family. Only for it to all come crashing down. And they lose Vandal completely again. And Jinx is doing everything to try and fix it, but she ends up getting beaten up. And Isha sees this and knows that her big sister is in danger, and she sacrifices herself to protect those around her. And this scene is just so heartbreaking because it's an act of pure love, and yet it completely destroys Jinx. With Vandal gone and with Isha gone, she just has no hope. And we've seen her at rock bottom before, but when we see her again in episode 8, it is just on a whole other level. And I love how we spend episode 7 getting reminded of who she truly is as a person. How she can be so brilliant and so good and so loving. And it's just not a reminder to Echo, it's a reminder of the audience about how this person has just gone through so much and she didn't have the support system she needed, and that's why she's this broken, traumatized person. So it really breaks my heart when she says, "There's no good version of me." Throughout season 1, there's this conflict between Jinx and Caitlyn because she kind of makes Vi feel guilty about moving on, about being happy, and there's a moment in episode 8 here where Jinx is just like, "Don't feel guilty. You don't need me. You deserve each other. I wish you nothing but the best, but I can't be a part of this." And episode 9 begins with, like, I think is one of the most heartbreaking scenes ever. Well, she burns Selko's office. She burns the last drop. She just gets rid of every place that meant something to her. It's like she's erasing her memory. And she's ready to kill herself. And she does it technically until she's saved time and time again by Echo. And one detail I love about this moment is how Echo says he's trying to stop a friend from blowing us both up. She then doesn't use a grenade, she decides to fall. And it's like she just wants no more blood on her hands. She doesn't want to hurt anyone anymore. And Echo reminds her about maybe who she could be, and the implication is that he tells her about his experience in episode 7, and it gives her hope. So she ends up coming back to fight to save her sister, and I love the choice of dialogue here about how, "Don't you get it, sis? I'm always with you, even when we're worlds apart." The choice in words there is very deliberate, and a bunch of action happens, and at the end, she sacrifices herself to save Vi. And the fact that she was willing to sacrifice herself and to protect her sister just shows how far she's come. She did something right. It's an act of selflessness, and it's an act of love. And it's a way that she'll be remembered by her sister so she can know peace. And that scene when she's falling with Warwick and she has the memories of the family, it's just great stuff. But that said, Jinx is clearly alive, and viewing the last few episodes as her getting ready to leave Piltover and Zaun forever and moving on someplace else, about leaving the past behind, I think it's really well done. I know at the end of season 1, Selko mentions that we can leave, and in episode 4, Paint the Town Blue, when she's talking to Selko's chair, she's talking about how there's no point in her staying here. So the idea of her leaving Zaun and Piltover has been planted throughout the seasons. And there's a fresh start ahead of her and new adventures await, and I love this character, I really do. Like, she is such a funny, likable character, but she's also so deeply broken, and there's real complexity to her. I love how we see just how good of a big sister she was to Isha, especially when she accidentally gets hit by Vi, and she like wipes the Isha wipes the blood off, and Jinx puts the hat back on, being like, "You still got all your insides." Like, we just see so much potential here, and I can't wait to see more of her. And also, I love her style, the weapons, the use of paint. That entrance is so badass in the last episode. So this character is just maybe my favorite character ever. It's either Jinx or Ellie Williams in The Last of Us video games. But then we also got Haley Steinfeld as Vi, and I think she does such an incredible job here, where she comes across as tough and a badass, but she's also so unsure of everything going on, and she's very emotionally vulnerable, and I just thought Haley brought so many different dimensions to this character. And I like how at the beginning of this season, she's just devastated. Caitlyn lost her mom as a result of her sister, and Vi feels somewhat responsible. And she's broken up about the direction Jinx's life has gone in. And she doesn't feel like she belongs in Piltover, and when Caitlyn asks her to be an enforcer, she can't agree. That goes against everything she is as a person, and she leaves to get plastered. But then Piltover gets attacked again, and I don't know if Vi thinks that Jinx was behind it, if she inspired these people, but she still feels somewhat responsible. And Caitlyn tells her that if I go after her alone, it's either me or her coming back in a box. So Vi's put in a situation where she has to choose, and she's choosing Caitlyn, and she's choosing to clean up her mess. And therefore, Vi reluctantly puts on the badge because she thinks it's the right thing to do in the moment. And they take down a bunch of the Chem Barons, they take down a bunch of Shimmer, and then they're ready to face Jinx. And when Jinx calls her out on using the Grey, Vi justifies it as a way to keep the people safe, but that's her own justification of doing it. And she is so distraught at what her sister has become, and she thinks she's ready to kill Jinx. Her heart and her brain are constantly in conflict throughout this series. And she's ready to kill Jinx, but she can't quite get there, and then Isha saves Jinx, and for the first time she sees hope in her. And that hope causes a change in heart, and she decides to stop Caitlyn. And Caitlyn is pissed off about it, understandably, and she kind of breaks up with Vi, and she hits her. So Vi is just left broken and beaten and alone. Reminds me of the state of Powder at the end of episode 3 in season 1. And with no real mission right now, with no one by her side, Vi decides to become a pit fighter. She starts drinking excessively, and she just becomes a more aggressive person throughout these next few months, until Jinx comes and sees her. And Vi is reluctant to go along, but she does. And there's this great moment where she sees this mural of Jinx on the wall, and she realizes that the people down there have really come to respect Jinx. and also it makes her reflect on her own actions. And like I said earlier, they realize that they're both flawed, and she decides to trust her sister, and it pays off incredibly well. And the family is back together, only for it to be destroyed once again. But she's seen the good in Jinx now, and she goes to save her. And Jinx is just so beaten and so broken up that she doesn't want to be a burden on Vi's life anymore. So she's just like, move on, I'm no good for you. And Vi does end up moving on. And the one bit of conflict between her and Caitlyn's relationship is gone now. And when Caitlyn reveals that she let Vi free Jinx, it was Caitlyn's way of showing change and maybe potentially forgiveness. And like, Vi has always had the hearts for Caitlyn, but she falls in love in this moment with no hesitation right there. And she's no longer unsure of, well, she should be and who she is. She decides to take Caitlyn's she decides to stand alongside Caitlyn. But that all said, when Jinx does come back to save her, she realizes that maybe her sister is good. She's got that hope again, and after the fight goes down and she's devastated, she thinks Warwick is gone, and she just takes a moment to grieve everything that has happened. It feels like her past is just slipping through her fingers, and Warwick ends up attacking her, and she gets saved by her sister. And Vi is never going to let go of Jinx, so Jinx has to do it for her. And she's broken up by her sister's sacrifice, but at least she'll remember her sister fondly of who she became. And I really don't know if Vi and Jinx are ever going to interact again in this universe, but her and Caitlyn do seem pretty set on finding her. And I like how she's open to another fight while still mourning everything that has happened. And I feel like the last 4 or 5 episodes of this season is the most defined Vi has ever felt as a character. So really great character work there, and Katie Leong as Caitlyn does a really great job. She showcases such range in this season, and she is 100% convincing. And at the beginning of this season, she has just lost her mom, and grief and hatred has consumed her. But Vi is the one bright spot in her life. Vi is her moral compass. And Vi agrees to help Caitlyn out, and she doesn't push back as much as she should, because she just wants to be there for Caitlyn, and she wants to do what she thinks is the right thing. And Caitlyn decides to completely disrespect her mom's legacy by releasing the Grey. And Vi starts to get a hint of change within Caitlyn, and Caitlyn promises not to change, but she was willing to maybe kill a kid in order to get to Jinx. And Vi couldn't let that happen. And when Vi actually becomes the moral compass and she actually stands up to Caitlyn, Caitlyn hits her. And now Caitlyn is kinda alone, but then Mbetha uses that to her advantage. She decides to use Caitlyn's grief and hatred and loneliness and puts her in a position of commando. But we kind of see all these emotions fade by the time we even get to episode 4. and she constantly has to remind herself of her hatred for Jinx in order to justify her actions. And she's just so unsure. She's constantly in doubt. And it's like she's doing things that she knows that she's against. And especially in episode 5, they arrest Singe, and she finds out that this is a guy who made Shimmer, and he was a guy from Piltover who lost someone he loved, so he used that as a justification to unleash horrors upon the world. And it's like Singe is holding up a meal to Caitlyn in that moment, and she hates who she has become. And when she runs into Vi, she's in a position where she has to choose a side 100%. She either goes after her dad and uses him as a weapon, or she helps protect him. And she decides to help Vi. And I think that one scene in episode 8, where Caitlyn tells Vi that Jinx is arrested, she didn't know what to do. She's put in a very difficult situation, and when she actually goes down to visit Jinx, she pretty much spells it out. Well, she talks about how she's started to hate herself because of who she has become. And I think in some ways, she starts to sympathize with Jinx because they're both grieving people who have done bad things as a result. So she gives Vi the opportunity to free her sister, which is an act of trust and love towards Vi. And so Vi wouldn't have to choose. And in doing so, this cements their relationship. And even at the end, she starts to believe in Jinx, and it seems like she wants to help them reunite. So I love the way, like, this character went through a lot, and I know it's some people's big issue with this season, and I can understand it, but I think it's all there, it's all present, and I thought it was all done effectively. Then we get to Kevin Alejandro as Jace, who I thought was a much more compelling character this season, because the season begins and he lost his best friend, his partner. And in an act of desperation, he uses the hex tech to save his life. And as a result, things escalate from there. But the attack on Piltover shook him up, and he is kind of partially responsible because it was a hex tech weapon. So he says, no weapons, I'm done with that. But then another attack, while they were completely helpless against Shimmer, shows that that's not a reality. You made hex tech, you kind of have to use it. And Victor finds out that he made more weapons, and Victor is just like, peace out. So now Jace just feels alone and just really broken up about everything. And then he finds out that Hexcore is affecting the environment, and he ends up being sent to the future. Well, everyone and everything is gone. It's a hex tech wasteland, and he feels responsible. So he promises to stop Victor, to stop that future from happening. And that scene where he comes back and kills Silo is such a badass moment, but it also shows just how serious this is to him. He wanted to leave a promising legacy, and he did quite the opposite. So he sees Victor and he kills him, and when Singe ends up bringing him back, Jace's actions only make things worse. It's only when Jace appeals to Victor's humanity does he succeed in his goal. And it's the fact that these two did have a real platonic bond, that this relationship can really save the day. And I thought this character was really compelling. I maybe would have liked a little bit more of him and Mel, but still, what we got was great. And then we got Harry Lloyd as Victor, and he does a really great job. He has a lot to work with, and he just nails 100% of it. And I love how at the beginning of this season, he is saved against his will. He wanted to die. He wanted Hextech to be gone. And two of his wishes are compromised just like that. And he sees that Jace isn't going to change. They're still making weapons, so he leaves in this new body that he has. And he's been given gifts, and he's also getting somewhat manipulated by the Hextech. And he uses these gifts to do what they set out to do, to help people. But in doing so, he creates a hive mind. He creates a community, and he still wants to save Vandal, but after Jace tries to kill him, his view on humanity just changes completely. And he ends up thinking that humanity is the disease, that war, pain, heartbreak is all just side effects of humanity. So he wants to cure it by getting rid of free will, because he has always wanted to try to fix any and all imperfections. And when he's brought back, he ends up losing his humanity completely, only for Echo to attack him. Well, some of Victor comes back, and Jace is able to communicate and bond with the part of humanity that is left in him. And it turns out that in the future, Victor does become more human again, and he realizes what he has done, that there's no more life, there's no more dreams, and just everything is a wasteland, and that he made a terrible mistake. And that he has set Jace on this path because he is the only one who he truly cares deeply enough to change him. And together, they end up destroying the Wild Rune, the Hextech, and they both die. Die? Maybe? Who knows? But they both are willing to sacrifice themselves to save everyone else. And I just really love how all that is explored. How his relationship with Jace is what kept him grounded, is what kept him human, and how he constantly tried to do the right thing until he just became a monster. And I know some people don't agree. I thought it was done very effectively, and his final form is so badass. That scene where he steps on the glass and it breaks, holy shit, just stunning. Truly. And then we get Ellen Thomas as Mbessa, and I don't think Mbessa is a super complex character. Like, Silco and Victor are better villains if you ask me, but she's still menacing, she's still powerful, and she's definitely a real threat. We also see how she's a master manipulator, and how she doesn't really care about family like she pretends to. And because she is so outpowered in where she comes from, she is desperate for any bit of power she can attain. So I do think she was a great villain, but Silco is still the GOAT. And then we get to Isha, who is just a wonderful addition to this season because she just brings out the good in Jinx so effortlessly. This is such a loving and fun character, and I love the way that she communicates non-verbally. I love how she pushes Jinx to do good, and how she is always willing to protect those that she loves. It's a consistent trait of her character in just a few episodes, so her sacrifice felt in character and it was very powerful. And just so much of this character reminds me of who Powder was, and I thought that was done very effectively as well. Torx Alagandura as Mel, I thought did a really great job as well. I know some people aren't the biggest fan of her storyline this season, but it did work for me. The Black Walls I found to be very compelling, and it adds to the world building. It's great foreshadowing of what we can see in a future show, but I also thought it added some depth to Mel's character and her relationship with her family, and it gives her some powers so she can stand up against her mom. So I liked all this stuff. Then Reed Shannon as Echo does such a great job. He brings so much sincerity and personality to this character, and he really is the MVP. Like, he's a great character in season 1, but his one flaw is that he was willing to give up on Jinx. And I love how in episode 7 we see how at first he thinks Powder is this monster, and he just pushes her away constantly, but then he starts to remember who she truly is as a person, and how good and how smart she is, and how much potential there is for her. And he even sees Silco and Vandal as friends again, and it reminds him of forgiveness. So he uses these lessons, his experience, to save Jinx. And they end up working together, and he is the character that saves the day. It's Echo and Jace. And I love how he was in this perfect universe, and he was willing to give that up to save someone that he once loved. And the fact he ends up alone at the end of this season is such a tragic end to such a great character. And the way the time powers are captured are just phenomenal. Love it. Mick Wingert as Heimerdinger does a really great job. I love how much personality this character has, and I love how he has grown to appreciate life more. How he's willing to do fun things, how he's willing to pick up hobbies, and he really does learn empathy. And I love the song Spin the Wheel. I didn't know that Mick Wingert had that in him, so that was a welcome surprise. Amira Van continues to do a great job as Savika. I like how tough and badass this character is, but I also like how she still remains loyal to Silco, and how she won't give up Jinx, and she is willing to work with Jinx to take on Vi and Caitlyn and the rest of the Enforcers. And you can just tell that she cares so much about the cause. And I think it's a fitting end she ends up on the council. Also, her new arm is like the coolest weapon in anything ever. It's just wild and crazy and destructive and unpredictable, and I loved it. Brett Tucker as Singe, I think, does a very good job. I like how menacing and mysterious this character comes across, and I like how he is behind some truly horrific acts, and he does it in the name of love. This is a guy who thinks love is a valid justification for any evil act. And, like, he really crosses lines. And I actually kind of like the fact that he got a happy ending. Like, Echo was willing to give up everything. He sacrificed so much and he did so much good, and he ends up alone. But Singe is evil and he got what he wanted. It's unfair, but I think it kind of sticks with you. Lenny Citrino as Smeech is only in one episode, but boy did he leave an impression. His voice is so distinct and the character design is just perfection. In such minimal screen time, he really stood out here. And then we've got Katie Townsend as Maddie, who we first meet and we're just like, oh, she's nice, she's caring. Okay, she seems like a good person. And she works together with Vi and Caitlyn to take on Zahn. And then she begins a sorta relationship with Caitlyn. And the end reveal that it turns out she's actually a plant and she's been working for Mbessa the entire time is actually a really fantastic twist. And looking back, it's really obvious, but it was executed incredibly well. I don't think anyone actually predicted that. So she ends up standing out. And she got what was coming for her. Or Balin as Lois does a really good job. This character isn't in the show much, and he says very little, but there is still a story here. We first meet him when he's getting drunk with Vi in the first episode, and you can tell he's grieving and he's drinking as a result, but he kind of befriends Vi in that moment. And it seems like he joins the Enforcers to help a friend out, but after things start getting dark and they want to implement martial law, he's just like, I'm good, peace out. And he hangs around with Vi and Zahn, and he's there for her, but when she starts being cruel to him, he's just like, you know what, I'm good, peace out. But then there comes a point where she really does need him and he's there for her. And I like how he dies as a hero. Stuart Scudamore as Rictus, I thought was a great evil henchman to Mbessa. This guy says very little, but he is still a badass and he just has this menacing presence to him. Jason Spacek as Selko continues to do a great job, and I like the way Selko is handled throughout this season. Like, he did do some evil stuff, but he did have a genuine love for Jinx, And I like how he's remembered in a positive way, and even how in Jinx's conversations with Silco, he kind of pushes her in a positive way. So, yes, whenever he showed up, I thought it was a great addition. JB Blank as Vandal does a really good job. He doesn't say much, but this character is handled incredibly well. Like, he's back as Warwick, but Vi and Jinx trigger memories for him to the point where we kinda get Vandal back, and Jinx and Vi are determined to fully bring him back so they can be a family again. He represents hope, only for it to be taken away, and he ends up losing himself completely. And the fact that Jinx and Vi are fighting him in the climax is a fitting end to the story. It's tragic, it's sad, but it works thematically. Them facing their past together. And I also love the flashbacks with Vandal and Silco and how they kind of lived up to a promise they made, but they also didn't. And I thought that added some nice depth to these characters and this story. Bill Lobley as Huck does a good job, and I like the way this character is handled in season 1, where you get a sense of the state of Zon under Vandal, and then we get a sense of the state of Zon under Silco, and now we get a sense of the state of Zon with Victor doing his magic. Well, he looks better, he seems healthy, but maybe there's something more sinister going on. Kimberly Brooks as Skye does a good job, and I never took it as that was actually Skye. I took it as she represents Victor's guilt and his humanity. I said earlier that Vi is Caitlyn's moral compass, and I viewed this projection of Skye to be Victor's. And she inspires him to do what he thinks is good in the moment. So, the entire cast really does a great job. And there is so much going on in this season. Like, we got everything with Jinx's storyline and Isha and her fall from grace and her redemption again. We've got Vi's story in how her morals are compromised and she falls, but then she redeems herself. We've got Caitlyn's losing herself to grief and hatred and her redemption. We've got Ambessa's rule. We've got Victor's turn. We've got the Black War storyline. We got Jace's mission. We got the Echo and Heimerdinger stuff. There is a lot going on, but it all completely works. I love how the show starts off as fairly grounded, and it introduces some more fantasy elements in the first season, and then in this second season it introduces even more, and it's a nice gradual build to understand everything going on, and I loved how bold and ambitious this story was. It really goes in some places I wasn't expecting, and I loved the fact that they were willing to take chances, and for me, it paid off. And I also just love how character focused this show is, and I bought each and every character beat, and most importantly, this show is so emotional. Like, it hits me in a way that almost nothing else does. It does a great balance of being hopeful and moving in moments, but also being heartbreaking in other moments. Like, Cassandra's funeral was really sad. Jinx letting go of Silco. Jinx witnessing her sister as an enforcer. The end of the big Jinx and Vi fight where Jinx is like, I'm glad it's you. Had to be you. How Caitlyn ends up leaving Vi alone and broken. Everything in episode 4 with Jinx and Isha just made me feel so good. And I love that scene in the prison where everybody is placing their hands on Jinx. And then when she reunites with Isha and she gives her a big hug and she starts crying, just a truly beautiful moment. The flashback with Vandal and Silco and Felicia, I thought had plenty of emotional weight to it. The hug where Vi tells Jinx, what are you waiting for? He's your dad too, is maybe the most beautiful moment in anything ever. Like, it's either that or the museum scene in Last of Us 2, but it is such a powerful, feel-good moment. And just most of episode 6, watching Jinx and Vi interact without fighting, just really affected me. And then we get that perfect moment of Vandal saving Jinx and Jinx hugging him, and Vi runs in and Isha hugs Jinx, and Vi looks at Caitlyn, and in this moment her family is the priority. She doesn't feel the need to explain why she's with Jinx. She just goes over there and hugs her dad, and she puts her hand on Isha, and it's just such a great, perfect moment. So when it's ruined, it is just devastating. And Isha's sacrifice is so powerful in how much she cares for Jinx. And that little psh as Jinx is yelling for Isha, for Vi to hold her back. It is a heartbreaking moment. All of episode 7 I found to be very emotional. Just this word. Like, what could have been. What could have been Echo's life. What could have been Powder's life. And there's just a constant bittersweetness throughout. But that dancing between Powder and Echo is just one of the most beautiful moments ever. And then they're talking on the rooftop, and Echo is realizing what he has done wrong in the past few years, and Powder goes to kiss him, and he's like, can we pretend it's the first time? And they share a passionate kiss. Love it. I think in episode 8, where we see Jinx in prison, and like, we have seen her down, but we haven't seen her like this, just hopeless and empty. And Jinx is my favorite character, to see her in this way was rough. And then I think the opening of episode 9 is just the most heartbreaking scene. I really do. Jinx just setting every place important to her on fire, and then she tries to off herself time and time again, and she's just not hesitant at all. it's just, I just care for this character so much, and um, her sacrifice at the end, despite knowing she's alive, still hits incredibly hard because she's still saying goodbye to her sister, and she's still saying goodbye to Vandal and what her life could have been. And I think it is just so powerful. It really is. That shot as they're falling and she remembers Vandal tucking them in bed one night. Yeah, just really great, powerful stuff. And I think Jace and Victor's final confrontation has lots of emotional weight as well. So, like, honestly, I just find this show to be some of the most emotional storytelling ever, and it's just because they have written this story so incredibly well, and I care for these characters on such a deep level. And I just love everything this season is trying to say thematically. Like, whether it's Warwick or Jinx, this season is about seeing the good in someone and trusting them. The first season is more about how people change for the worse and how trauma affects us, and those ideas do carry over into this season as well, but there's also more hints of forgiveness and redemption and second chances, and it's just a much more hopeful season while still delivering on those devastating moments as well. It's really well balanced, and it also explores what defines us as individuals. Is it our worst days? Is it our best days? Is it our potential? How much does our trauma and grief define us? And what we choose to do. It's also about how the people in our life affect the person we become. Like, Caitlyn is affected by Vi's presence. Vi is affected by Caitlyn's and Jinx's presence. Jinx is affected by Vi's and Isha's presence. You know, the first season focused more on parenthood and how the kids in our life can shape the person we become. This season is more about how just anyone we care deeply about impacts us. It's also about accepting imperfections. It's also about how humanity is the cause of everything good and everything bad. It's about compassion and rage and love and loss and hatred, and it's just about the human condition. There is so much going on thematically, and I find this show to be filled with substance. And I know this is a hot take, but I love the pacing and the efficiency of the storytelling. A couple years ago, I watched House of Dragons Season 1, and I know people love that show, but I found it so boring and so dragged out and so uninteresting. I know people love True Detective. I could not get into that show. And then you watch Arcane, and not only is it constantly entertaining, but the storytelling just fully delivers. Every scene is important. Every scene is relevant. It either pushes the story forward, it either adds to the characters, it either adds to the world building. There's no fat here. And in this day and age, it is greatly appreciated. It's also a very subtle show well, they don't feel the need to spoon feed you absolutely everything, and you have to read between the lines. And that is just my favorite kind of storytelling. Because all the information is there, and it's up to you to come up with your own conclusions. It's up to you to connect the dots. And it can make for good discussions, good theories. Your viewpoint on everything can change with repeated viewings. I just love the writing in this show. And there is some truly great dialogue. Some of my favorite lines are, I didn't know your mom was ill. It probably wouldn't have made a difference, but I didn't know. I love that line because as down as Jinx is in that moment, it's also kind of her way of apologizing. And it also shows how self-aware she is in that moment. I love the line, well, Victor tells Sky, I'll miss our chats. And Sky replies, no, you won't. It's like Victor is human now and he thinks he'll reflect back on their chats. But Sky knows that he is losing his humanity. And he'll think of other things. He won't be concerned with any personal angles. And it's just great foreshadowing of what's to come, and it's just so brilliantly written. I love everything Selko says to Jinx in the prison cell, especially killing is a cycle. Started long before me and Vandal, and it'll go on after you and Vi. It just shows that this conflict, these issues are never ending. They will go on for generations. They have gone on for generations. I also just love the conversation between Felicia and Vandal and Silco. You're sadly mistaken. I'm Borza 1. It's nice to see the comedic side of Silco, and I just love their commitment in that moment. I love when Jinx is just like, wish I was delusional when I saw my sister gaining up with the Pelty goons that killed mom and dad. Well, at least they didn't have to see the cycle their daughter turned out to be. And Jinx replies, which one? Perfect comeback. It just shows that she is self-aware and Vi isn't in that moment. I also love when Vi's like, never thought mine would orphan kids. And Jinx is just like, why not? I've done it to myself enough times. And I also love Caitlyn's line where she's like, I want to tell her laugh from her throat forever. Just shows how dark of a path she's going on. And I could honestly go on and on. The dialogue here is just so well written. The entire show is just so well written, and I just love that about it so much. And then let's talk about the character designs, beginning with Jinx. And the look of Jinx is so iconic. The long blue hair, the outfit, the tattoos, and I love how you know everything you need to know about this character based in her appearance, especially in Act 3. Like in the alternate universe, she still looks like Jinx, but she looks like a much healthier version of herself. In episodes 8 and 9, you can see just how broken and empty she is based in her appearance. And I love her final look. It's just filled with her style and her personality. So, yes, this character is just iconic in every way. And I love how you also know about Vi's mental state in Act 2 based on her looks. She has a much darker, goth like look, but it really stands out. I like Victor's transformation throughout this season and how he gradually looks less and less human. I love the design of Victor's warbots. Um, Mel gets more powerful and she even ends up looking better by the end of this season. Jace has a much more rugged look, which tells you what you need to know about this character, that he has gone through hell. I like the look of Echo in episode 7, contrasted with how he looks in the main universe. Tells you everything you need to know about him. And Smeech and the rest of the Chem Barons also have very cool designs. And then let's talk about the different environments. I thought Victor's village looked amazing. The Hex Fort looks really cool. I love the mines that Jinx, Vi, and Isha go through, and whenever you clap, it lights up. That was a really cool idea. I love the look of the good universe in episode 7 where Peltover and Zon are united. And I also love the look of the apocalypse wasteland Jace goes through. I like how the area that Jinx and Vi and Caitlyn and Tavika fight in episode 3, how Jinx decorates it with her paintings. Stillwater Prison we see a bit more of, and I think it has a nice atmosphere to it. Singe's lab. The Black Walls magic space area. Well, it's just covered in this red vines and this black space, and it's just so interesting visually. And even the astral plane that Victor hangs out in looks just remarkable. So the environments are brought to life in just a stunning way. And this show is filled with some very cool weapons. I already mentioned it, but Savika's arm is just so badass. The giant chainsaw in the first episode looks really cool. I like how the gray looks like a monster at times. I love Jinx's colorful weapons. The Hextech sniper. I love how the Hextech weapons start glitching in episode 3. Just a small detail that really stands out, and Echo's Z drive is just incredible. And I also love some of the world building here, like the wild runes and the appearance of them is just remarkable. The introduction to the Black Walls is once again visually stunning and really intriguing. I look forward to seeing more of that weird magic stuff. I love how the green ruins, they never explain it, but you can tell it's like a defense weapon. Singe's daughter, I believe, is a big character in the games. Oceana or something like that. And we find out how she gets her body. There's the claw dude with the 3 eyes, which is kind of funny because I remember back in season 1, there was the one scene where Jinx shoots a claw, and some people were talking about, oh, that has to be foreshadowing for this one dude. And it turns out they were correct, that this guy, I don't know who he is, has been watching the events of this show from afar. And then one other bit of board building I love is Caitlyn's computer. It's the perfect mix of new and old fashioned, and it is just very interesting to look at. And then it is time to talk about the animation itself. And I've thought about this plenty in the past few weeks, but sitting on it, this is the best looking anything that has ever existed. It is better looking than every other TV show, every movie, every video game. I'll say it, every work of art. The visuals in this show are on a whole other level. And the mix of 2D and 3D animation is just stunning. The characters and the environments look great. The emotions are brought to life incredibly well. And I just love some of the additional detail, like how the smoke or how the weapons really pop out. And there's just so many amazing and unique creative decisions regarding the look of this show. Like in the first episode, Cassandra's funeral is like a charcoal painting, and I was just blown away. Like, that is just beautiful to look at. Then in episode 2, the reintroduction to Zahn to the song Suckle has this cool cardboard look to it, while some characters really stand out, and I can't describe it, but it's just beautiful to look at. I know some people didn't like this moment, but I thought the Hellfire montage at the beginning of episode 3 is just so stylized and so cool and so badass and just incredible. Especially when Caitlyn shoots her net and you can see the different parts of the screen breaking up into pieces. And then just some of the transitions there. It's just on a whole other level. Like, nothing else but maybe the Spider-Verse movies even compare. The paint the town blue, how we get all these different visuals and there's just this constant blue paint that's getting added onto each scene, which tells you everything you need to know about the state of Zahn and how Jinx is viewed, while also giving you the story of what has happened in the past few months. And it's just so stylized and so cool. In episode 9, like I said, the astral plane stuff looks really cool, and I just love it when they're going through Warwick's mind and there's all these lava visuals, which do come back into play later. But when they find the mysteries, the memories of Vandal, and it's done in this watercolor style, it is just breathtaking. Just absolutely remarkable. And there's like this transition where the red and blue of Powder and Vi move across the screen and it turns into Vi getting her hair cut, and it's just beautiful. It really is. And then in episode 7, I love how they slowed down the frame rate for Echo and Powder. And apparently it's 4 frames per second because Echo can only go back 4 seconds. So that's a neat little touch, but it also just emphasizes how Echo wants this moment to go on forever. So there's substance to it, along with just being stunning. The beginning of episode 9, where Jinx cuts her hair, it's like this black light look to it. I can't describe it, but I would have loved more of that. I just thought that was beautiful as well. I love how when Isha's sacrificing herself, we see the memories of her time with Jinx in this hand-drawn style. And I thought it just captured the innocence of their time together, and it looked incredible. And even when Warwick is hunting Vi and Jinx and Isha down, the look is very hand-drawn. At least it looks that way, and it kind of reminds me of the movie Wolfwalkers. Like, there is so many interesting decisions being made, and it just goes above and beyond. The colors pop when needed. I already talked about it 4 times, but Savika's arm, when the smoke comes out and the camera moves around her arm, the colors really stand out, and I love how colors can also establish atmosphere. Like with some of the Warwick fights, it's this foggy red look, and then when things calm down, it's green, and it tells you what you need to feel in this moment subconsciously. And some of the camera angles are just truly stunning. Like, I know it's an animated show, but there's so much movement, and this show just always feels so alive, especially during the Jinx and Vi fight. And some of the cuts, I love when we get introduced to Vi in episode 5 when she's a pit fighter, and it just cuts to the beat of the music. It just captures this chaotic energy. I love the overly cartoony, stylized action scenes, like when Smeech and Savika are fighting. And some of the transitions, I already kind of mentioned it, are just top notch. Like when Jinx and Vi and Caitlyn and Savika are fighting, and it keeps cutting back to Jace, Echo, and Heimerdinger. It is just so interesting, and it just has this seamless look to it. I love when Vi stands up against Warwick and she yells Vandal, and it just zooms in into this flashback. That was really well done. I love how at the end of the Remember scene, it's Jinx and Vi getting their height measured, and then it cuts to that actual place. Jinx burning everything down, and it keeps cutting back to the match falling, and then the way the broken glass looks, it kind of looks like a monster. That is just visually remarkable. I love the glitchy style that this show sometimes has. The action is captured perfectly. It can be very tense and exciting, but also emotional. And like the ending with Jace and Victor in the astral plane, and you see all these different bodies, all these different lights. It is just so insane to look at. Like, it is truly beautiful. And I also love the change in intro. How it's this stripped down, more human, more Renaissance view of these characters. And yeah, just every decision made visually is the right one, and I could gush about the visuals for hours, but there is nothing else doing it on this level. Just nothing. This show is a visual masterpiece. But one thing I don't think people talk about enough with this show is the sound design. Like, this show sounds incredible. There is so many weird, interesting sounds throughout, and it really helps make this show feel alive. If I had to choose one section where the sound really stood out to me, it's the zero gravity fight scene in the finale. just sounds and looks so incredibly cool. And speaking of sound, the soundtrack to this season is holy shit, absolute perfection. People might consider this to be an exaggeration, but it isn't. It's my real, genuine thoughts. This might be the best album I have ever heard in my life. Because there are so many different genres here. Every song stands out. And I could just listen to any one of these songs on repeat. And each song is perfectly used, and the lyrics do actually tie into the story being told. So, I'm going to talk about each song, and I Can't Hear It Now, I thought was just a beautiful, emotional song. Perfectly used at Cassandra's funeral. And then we get Heavy is the Crown, which is a different version than the studio version, but I like the gradual build up here, and it's used really effectively at the end of episode 1. And then we get the reintroduction to Zorn, set to the song Suckle, and this song is just a complete vibe. It just sounds so incredibly good, and I love how after Jinx shoots those guys and she's talking to Isha, the music then relies on the background vocals, and it just completely works for me. I love this song. And then the Savika and Smeech fight set to Renegade. That song just has so much chaotic energy, and it's just so loud and so fun, and it just brings so much to that scene, and I love the song. Hellfire, I think, is a really great song as well. Dubstep isn't really my kind of music, and it's kinda dubsteppy, but it still completely works. And I love the chorus. Well, he's just like, Hellfire, and that part really stood out. And yeah, this song is badass. To Ashes and Blood is one of the most unique sounding songs I have ever heard. And I love how it doesn't sound like the type of music to play during a fight scene, but it still manages to work 100%, and I love those chants throughout the song. It just feels epic and emotional at the same time. Paint the Town Blue, Why It's All Around You, that's a really great chaotic sound song. It sounds great. Love the use of it within the show. Remember Me. I love how there's an intro that ties in perfectly to the song, and it just feels grand and operatic at first, and then it just has this nice emotion to it. And it makes me feel nostalgic, it makes me feel emotional, and it makes me feel hopeful, and it's just perfectly utilized. Definitely a top 2 song of this album, and I'll be listening to it on repeat for the next few months. Isha's song I think is really great as well. I like how it's not in English, and it kind of relies on the emotion of the sound of it, just like how Isha is non-verbal, but you still emotionally care for her. I thought that was nicely done, and it just feels like this nice farewell song while also feeling epic at the same time. Cocktail Molotov, I love. Like, I'm not big into screamo music, but this song just has so much chaotic energy, and whenever I'm driving and I'm listening to it, I'm just walking out to it. Really great song. What Have They Done to Us just has this nice, quiet emotion to it, and it just has this haunting atmosphere, which I love very much. Rebel Heart is the most underrated song on this album. This is a banger. Just a really terrific song. The Beast has just this. I don't know how to describe it. It just sounds so metal, it sounds so hardcore, and I love how it transitions into Dear Friend Across the River at the end. Perfectly used within the show. Spin the Wheel is so good. I love the folky sound of it, and it has this quiet emotion as well. Ma Melodive Enemy is such a terrific song. It's just a vibe, it makes you want to dance, and it also has this quiet emotion as well. Fantastic, I think, fits that scene incredibly well. It just has those vibes in it, and it's still a very good song. The Line, look, I love 21 Pilots, and I just love how haunting and unnerving and how beautiful and how incredible this song sounds. I thought it was perfectly used within the show. Blood, Sweat, and Tears isn't really in the show. There's only those small bits where it's like, yeah, yeah, but the rest of the song isn't in the show. But that said, this song still feels like a very good war song at the same time. Come Play, I really like. It just has this fun vibe to it, and it fits that scene so incredibly well. Wasteland is the song of the album, though. This is the what could have been of season 2. It is haunting and heartbreaking and just such an incredible, perfect song. I will be listening, like, this would be one of my favorite songs of all time. And it's perfectly used within the show, both times it shows up. So the soundtrack is a 10 out of 10, like, just incredible stuff. But I don't think the music composed by Alexander Temple and Alex Seaver gets the credit it deserves. It does add to the feel of this universe, of Piltover, of Zorn, but there is some really great pieces of music here. My favorite is A Keepsake. Like, it just has this super cool, old-fashioned feel, and it just makes me want to dance, and I love how episode 7 ends with it. I also love Open Your Eyes. That has a very haunting, emotional sound to it. The Challenger has this nice energy. Episode 7 really delivered in the music. I thought I Promised You. It kind of replays the, what's it called? Narrative motif of Jace and Victor, and it just kind of comes together in this moment, and I thought this music sounded beautiful. And I also love the pieces Vow, A Deep Cut, Blusters and Bedrock, Agony, Caitlin's Hideaway. This show is just filled with great music, top to bottom. Just visually, it's a masterpiece, and just everything about the way it sounds, it's also a masterpiece, and it just adds to the overall feeling of this show. And since this is the last season of Arcane, was it a satisfying ending? And my answer is kinda. Like, if this was the end, I would be very unhappy. If this was it for this story, for these characters, for this universe, I would find it to be deeply unsatisfying, but it's not the end. It's not a goodbye to these characters. It's a see you later. I'm confident we will see Jinx and Vi and Caitlyn and Echo and Mel and maybe a few other characters again in other shows. So it's really only the beginning of this much bigger universe. And I still found that this finale had plenty of emotion and there was some great payoff for Jinx, Vi, Caitlyn, Vi and Caitlyn's relationship, Mel, Echo, Jace, Victor, Heimerdinger. I thought it wrapped up these characters' stories perfectly for now. The Zon and Peltover conflict is really never ending, but they are making steps in the right direction. But I always found that this show was much more focused on Jinx and Vi's storyline and Jace's and Victor's storyline. So I still got the resolution I needed. Do I wish we were getting a season 3? Yes, 100%. This is my favorite show this is my second favorite story of all time, period. Of course, I would have loved a season 3. But that said, Arcane is all I know of this universe. I don't know about Noxus and Ionia and these other places we might be going to. I don't know what characters await me in this universe. I don't know what the plans are. But I do know that I'm very excited and I hope, that this universe stays at this level of quality. And I've seen plenty of complaints about how people wanted more from this season, and I'll be honest, I wanted more from this season. But that's a great thing. So many times I watch a movie or a show and I'm like, I want less. But with this show, I want to see more of this universe. I want more of this story. I want more of these characters. And I got more than enough as it is. The story is still incredible and it's told efficiently and effective. But this is just a show I never wanted to say goodbye to. And yes, I would have loved more Caitlyn and Jace. I would have loved more Caitlyn and her dad. I would have liked to see more of the Enforcers in Zon. I would have liked to see more Vi and Jinx. Jinx and Echo. Victor and Jace. Jinx and Isha. Jinx and Isha and Savika. Maybe Jinx and Savika at the end. Mel and Jace. Caitlyn as a dictator. I would have liked to see a bit more of Zon and the last drop this season. I would like more Lois and Maddie. I would like more Heimerdinger and Echo. I would like more of the Chem Barons. But it's only because I love this show so much and I never get bored. I find everything compelling and I still find it to be perfect as it is. So the fact I want more is not a bad thing. It's only a bad thing is if I feel like I didn't get enough, and that's definitely not the case. Even after season 1, another perfect masterpiece, I still wanted more from that season as well. I wanted more Echo and Powder. I wanted more Vandal and Silco. I wanted more Grayson and Vandal, and Caitlyn and her mom, and Savika and Vandal, and Mel and Jace, and Vi and Jinx, and Sky and Victor, and Kim Barons, and the Firelights. I just wanted more of everything. And I think because I also want more of these characters together, I think it also works well. The characters wish they had more time together. So I don't find that to be an issue. I would have loved it if Arcane was a 12 season show and every episode was an hour long, but I'm more than satisfied and I'm more than happy with what I got. Just a few other things I want to mention that I love. I didn't mention him under characters, but I kind of wish I did. But the piano dude who becomes an enforcer to fight has such a good story, and it's told in only like 2 minutes. And that's just some of the magic of the show. That they can just add so much depth to a nobody character in minimal screen time. I also love Jace's explanation of the wild wounds to Echo at the start. That was very smartly written. I've rewatched like this season a few times already, and I'll continue to do so. But one thing I caught on a repeated viewing of episode 2 is when Victor is walking through Zaun, he sees a bunch of people worshipping Janna. And it's because the enforcers are going through Zaun with the Grey. So when Jinx does what she does and sends the Grey back to Piltover, they must have viewed it as an answer to prayer. And it's just a small detail that I love so much. I love how in the first episode we see the vents in Caitlyn's garden, and it's subtle foreshadowing of how her garden would get attacked by the Grey as well. I like when Jinx and Isha have the bugs fighting competition. It reminds me of Vi's story to Caitlyn in season 1 about how they would pretend to be monsters. Did I already mention this? I forget. I'll mention it again. But Isha's helmet has these little teeth that reminds me of Jinx's outfit at the end of the season. I like how this show uses flashbacks because it's used as memories for the character. They have purpose and they add to the feeling of nostalgia. And like if you watch a show like Lost, which is filled with flashbacks, the flashbacks just feel so random. They might connect thematically, but they're just kind of there as an extra story, while these flashbacks always have a purpose. I love how in episode 5, when Vi imagines Caitlyn and she's alone, and we see Jinx, my first reaction was, oh, that's an hallucination. And then I'm like, oh shit, she's really there. That's a great moment. I like how we see Deckard's head in Singe's office. I like how Jinx's hair is a mix of Felicia's and Silco's. Just a very nice touch. I also love how Felicia sounds so much like Jinx, and I looked it up. It's not Ella Pornell, which is shocking to me. I like how in season 1, Jace tells Vi, I can't let you leave. And then he says that to Silo in this season, but this time he actually doesn't let him leave. It shows you how much more radicalized he has been, how much more serious he is here. I like how when Victor gets shot by Jace, he lets go of that little gear wheel, which was the first thing they put through the hex tech. I like how in the alternate universe, Powder has Vi's necklace. I like that weird Warwick compass that Singe has to track him down. I like how in episode 6, Vi uses Caitlyn's weapon against Mbessa and it's this giant net. So when you go back and watch episode 3, the beginning section shows that Caitlyn captured the Chem Barons with the net as well. Just a nice little bit of detail. I like how the first person Vi tries to save in the final episode has blue hair, so you can tell that she was inspired by Jinx. So Vi gets a reminder of who her sister is and how she's viewed. I also believe it was the first person who put her hand on Jinx in the prison. I like how Jinx's hot air balloon at the end is her lair that she hangs out in. Just once again, you can tell that she's ready to leave everything behind. I am curious, like, where is her lair? Is it under the last drop? Like, is it this random area? Where was it? And I love the final Vandal flashback. Maybe I already said this when Jinx is falling and we see Vandal putting, yeah, I think I did say this, whatever, putting Jinx and Vi to bed. And I don't know, it's just a beautiful last memory of Vandal and what's happened since, and just a reflection of the loss that this family has suffered. So, yeah, there's just so many great aspects to this show. And this is a type of show that the more I rewatch it, the more I pick up. I think it is the best kind of storytelling. I know people disagree with me on this season, but I truly mean it. I think the storytelling is so smart and so subtle and so efficient and still so effective, and the attention to detail is just remarkable. I think it is a very entertaining show. It's never, not even for a second, unengaging or boring. I think this show delivers on all the emotions, the moving and inspiring and powerful emotions, as well as the heartbreak and tragic emotions as well. These characters are just some of my favorite. Like, don't get me wrong, I love Iron Man and I love Captain America and I love Luke Skywalker and Han Solo and Frodo and Sam and Gandalf. They're all great characters, but these characters are just on a whole other level. Jinx is a legitimate top 2 character of all time for me, and I think Vi is great. Echo might have actually became my second favorite character of the show in this season. Actually, no, maybe Silco. I don't know. The characters here are just so good, and the story is very compelling. It is bold, it is ambitious, and it goes for it. I think the voice cast, Ella Purnell, Haley Steinfeld, Reed Shannon, Jason Spacek, J.B. Blank, Harry Lloyd, everyone does a really great job. The romance of Echo and Powder in just one episode instantly became one of my favorite. The soundtrack is incredible and just perfection. Every song adds to the show, and every song is just one I will listen to on repeat for the next few months. The show has incredible sound design. It has incredible music. The animation is just breathtaking and unique and creative, and just every frame is like a painting. They really brought it to the next level here in that regard, and I was completely blown away. I love the feel of the show, and it's just unlike anything else. And this season just made me want to be a more hopeful, be a more forgiving person. It has impacted me in a very deep way, and this show just means the world to me. It really does. It's just a complete masterpiece to me. Once again, I know that people are much more critical of this season, but couldn't be me. It just fully landed, and I loved each and every second, and I'm grateful it exists just the way it does. And yeah, for the record, just like the first season, this is top 2 pieces of media for me. Last of Us 1 and 2, the video games, and Arcane League of Legends Season 1 and 2. These two are better than every other video game and every other TV show, and I would say better than every single movie. That's how much I love this show. It's an absolute favorite, so I'm giving Arcane League of Legends Season 2 a 10 out of 10. And if you know me, you know that I don't give out 10 out of 10s very often. But this season really is that good, and I'm sad it's over, but I'm choosing to be hopeful and optimistic for the future of this universe. I can't wait to see what happens next. I can't wait to see Jinx again in a future show. And if it's as good as Arcane, then this universe is going to be something truly, truly special and historic. But what were your thoughts on Arcane League of Legends Season 2? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Stay tuned for more videos soon. And Gavin out.